Welcome to Be With Champions. I'm your host, Greg Bennett. Well, today's conversation was one of the most inspiring and empowering conversations I think I've had on this show. Just so many great takeaways and just so many quotable quotes. Siri Lindley knows the power of the mind and the ability to use mental strategies just to optimize her life and take on the struggles that are presented. And in doing so, she's helping others do the same. I was just thoroughly enthralled with this entire chat. Before we go on, just a couple of bits of housekeeping. Please go to bennettendurance.com/media if you want to get the show notes, the timestamps, links, and also the sponsors' coupon codes can be found there. Also, please subscribe on your podcast app of choice. That would really help me out. So thanks for that. And finally, please keep the feedback coming. Loving it. On Instagram, I'm Greg Bennett World. On Twitter, I'm Greg Bennett 1. And then you can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn just as Greg Bennett. But anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Enjoy this one. I really did. Before we start, I've got to give a quick shout out to the brands that make this show possible. The only brands I'm working with are brands that provide products that I use daily and truly believe in. These products support my immunity, they help improve my recovery and my focus. First up, my friends at Athletic Greens. I love this company and I love their all-in-one daily drink. It's become a part of my morning routine. I'm heavily focused on supporting my immunity and boosting my energy and helping my gut health, but I want to do it naturally. And I found that support with Athletic Greens, a whole food sourced green drink that tastes great and there's no hassle. It's delivered straight to your door. And it's a highly absorbable powder that takes seconds to mix with water, so there's no clumpiness to deal with. I can't believe a green drink sourced from whole foods can actually taste so good. Personally, I truly love it. It's developed from a complex blend of 75 vitamins and minerals. It's packed with adaptogens for recovery, probiotics and digestive enzymes for gut health, and vitamin C and zinc citrate for immune support. So Athletic Greens is designed to help fill the nutritional gaps in your diet. And there's a great offer going on now for you to give it a try. Simply go to athleticgreens.com/Greg to claim our special offer of 20 free daily travel packets with your first order. $79 added value. And get Athletic Greens delivered straight to your door. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. This show is also brought to you by my friends at Hyperice. Some of these products I've been using for almost a decade. Makers of the award-winning Hypervolt, the world's most powerful percussion massage device featuring Quiet Glide technology. Hyperice is a wellness tech company that makes devices designed to help you move better. From handheld massage devices to vibrating foam rollers, thermal technology, and the Normatec compression systems, Hyperice helps you warm up faster, recover quicker, and simply move better. Used in professional training rooms throughout the NBA, the NFL, MLB, the MLS, Ironman, and other professional organizations for well over a decade. Designed to help improve circulation, flexibility, and relieve tension. Get $50 off all percussion devices now, no code needed, and get an additional 10% off with code GREG10 at hyperice.com. That's hyperice.com, HYPERICE.com, and use code GREG10 for 10% off. All right, my guest today is one of the few to reach the top of the world as an athlete by winning the ITU World Championships and 2 World Series titles, and then being able to transition into a multiple world champion coach. Her most notable athletes, including Mirinda Carfrae, 3-time Ironman world champion and 70.3 world champion, and Leanda, also an Ironman and 70.3 world champion, and Susan Williams to a bronze medal at the Athens Olympic Games. She's a gifted athlete, coach, speaker, and she's worked relentlessly to optimize these gifts and just share them with others. She's someone that always seems to look at life as glass half full and always trying to just get the most out of life. And I've been a friend for almost 20 years, I think, and I'm just so excited to have on the show one of the great personalities of the sport of triathlon. So welcome. And thank you for joining me on Be With Champions, Siri Lindley. How are you, Siri?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Greg. And it is an absolute joy to be on your show. I've been loving your podcast. I obviously love you. I've known you for over 20 years, and it's great to be here. So thank you for having me.
Well, I was very cautious about sort of reaching out to you. And I kind of wrote you and said, Siri, I know you've been through a lot and I want to talk about that. And I know that you've had to transition. There's been a lot going on in your life. So if it's okay, maybe let's start with what you've just gone through this last 6 to 9 months. I didn't mention it in the introduction because I wanted you to tell me about that most recent journey of Siri Lindley.
Sure. Well, in November, life was great, and life is great. It always is great because we're alive. But it was in November, and I'd been having some real hip issues from how hard I had trained for triathlon and maybe not doing all the right things for my body. But I went in to have a hip replacement, believe it or not.
Whoa.
And during my pre-op, they took all my blood work and they said, we're not going to be able to operate. There's something really, something going on with your blood work. You're going to need to get this checked out. And within 2 days, I got a phone call and my doctor said, you have acute myeloid leukemia. And you also have a genetic mutation that is going to make this really difficult to treat. Now, my world just turned upside down. It's like,
God. I just got goosebumps. I'm sorry. That's just, how frightening. Go on. I'm sorry.
Terrifying. And here I am. I'm an athlete. I take great care of my body. I work out every day. Like, I really pay attention to doing everything right for my body. And I looked, my wife was listening, Rebecca Keat, and she was bawling, tears coming out of her eyes. And I looked at her and I just, in my terror and in my shock, in that same moment, I just looked at her and I'm like, I've never felt such love for anyone in my entire life. And I felt her love back for me. And I felt my love for this life. And in that moment, I was just like, this is not my time to go. Like, I have so much more living to do and giving to do and so many things to accomplish. And I decided in that moment that no matter what, like, I am going to survive. And I'm not just going to survive this, but I'm going to thrive. And the crazy thing is, Greg, and I think that our decisions are so incredibly important. When you declare something, it means that every thought you have, everything that you do is focused solely on that outcome. And, it was the most terrifying thing ever. And I had to figure out, what am I going to do about this? And what's my plan of attack? And I have so many amazing people in my life that were, telling me you should go to this person and do this person or take this approach or take that approach. But in the end, just like with anything in life, you have to just listen to your gut and believe in what your gut is telling you and follow your heart. And I chose these two incredible doctors that happened to be right here in Denver, Colorado. And the goal was to do this clinical trial, and hopefully that would put me in remission. And I had no doubts. Like, most people are like, oh, clinical trial, like, don't do that. That's scary. And I was only like the 7th person to ever do this trial. But I felt like, I've got to do this. This is it. And the goal was to get in remission through that and then immediately, like, go into hospital and get a bone marrow transplant. And basically what they do is a week before the bone marrow transplant, they drop the biggest bomb they possibly can on you to just take your body to where you're almost dead. It's really scary, but they do that to just wipe out everything that was there before. So when they do the bone marrow transplant, you can take it and your body will receive it. Now, let me just tell you a little story outside of this, because I think a lot of triathletes can relate to this on a different level. When I got out on social media and told everybody about my diagnosis, I was very positive about, okay, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to survive this. And these are the things I'm going to do. And this woman wrote me and she said, Siri, how can you be so positive about this? Don't you realize that the statistics show that the chances of you surviving are less than 10%? And I read this and I'm like, I can't believe this woman is actually saying this to me. But I tell you what, oh man, that built up a fire in me. And I wrote her back and I said, I am not a statistic. I am Siri Lindley. And I've proven in the past that what is impossible is really possible. And I'm going to prove that again. I will triumph. And that gave me, as much as it infuriated me and hurt me and upset me and worried me, it gave me this fire that made me even more determined if that was even possible. but basically, Greg, I mean, it has been the hardest thing I've ever been through in my entire life. I mean, this disease, it brings you to your knees, and one of the things I had to learn, as triathletes, we're all so self-sufficient and we, it's all up to us. The gun goes off, it's all up to you. No one's there holding your hand or helping you make it happen. There are people behind the scenes, obviously, but I needed to learn how to receive. I needed to learn to allow others to take care of me, because I got to a point where I couldn't do anything myself. I was so weak and so sick that my wife had to take care of me. My mom had to take care of me. I was in hospital for over a month, a former shadow of myself. But what I always had inside of me was remembering who I am and remembering, what I had accomplished in the sport. When I started at 23 years old, I didn't even know how to swim, but I, 8 years later, became a world champion. And that, I had the photo of me winning the world championships up on my hospital wall, along with like 20 vision boards, kind of reminding me of life that was waiting for me. But that picture of me winning the world championships was my proof. My proof that I have everything I need inside of me. And as impossible as this seems right now, as sick as I am, as weak as I am, I will triumph and I will survive. And having that proof is so powerful. And we all have our own version of that kind of proof of how capable we are. But long story short, Greg, I'm just so deeply grateful for my A team, which was, my wife and my amazing mom and the doctors and nurses and the hospital. And now in 2 days, I'm 6 months post bone marrow transplant and I'm cancer free. So
really, wow.
I get to live.
All kudos to you. And honestly, just if there's anybody in the world that I would have said is going to beat something like this, it would have been hard pressed to put anybody above you. And what I mean by that is, let me take it a step back. I had on this episode a show Dr. Tommy Wood a few weeks back, and Dr. Tommy Wood is one of the most brilliant men on the planet. For those that haven't listened to it, he, biochemistry degree at Cambridge University, medical degree at Oxford University, and then neuroscientist, PhD, everything you can imagine. Anyway, we were talking about, the mental approach and what our mental, basically what we think has a direct effect on our physiology, right? And when you hear that from somebody with that kind of an education, that, it's one thing to talk about, visualizing and affirmations but he said, and the one thing that I take away from knowing you for so long is that you have a very comfortable way of getting inside your own mind and taking control of it. And that's obviously taken work over years, but you've done that as an athlete, you've done that as a coach and helped other athletes do that. And so you're very comfortable in going, right, I'm taking control of my own life. I am going to have this kind of an attitude. I'm going to be grateful for this. I'm going to do this and this. And I think when we talk about the fact that what we think has a direct effect on our physiology, when you get told this information, even when I heard about it, I was like, if anybody is going to be stronger than this, it's going to be this woman. And I can't tell you how happy it is for me to hear that where you are now, and just how amazing it is to have, Keatsy on your side and your mum, who are just both beautiful, wonderful women that have just been there for you the whole way through, and just absolutely fantastic. I guess the next question is, how's your hip?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, I am so grateful for this bad hip or for the really bad hip.
Of course.
I mean, it saved my life. Had I not had a bad hip, I wouldn't have found this when I did. The hip is so much better. I mean, because I spent probably 4 months of doing absolutely nothing except for light walking. So it helped it a lot. And kind of the luxury I have now, and of course, I put a positive spin on everything, is, in my bone marrow transplant, my donors were my sister and an umbilical cord. And basically my sister's cells taught the umbilical cord what to do. And now the umbilical cord is my new immune system. And I'm basically like a baby right now. It makes no sense, but I'm basically like 6 months old right now. And my immune system, I have to go have my 1 year vaccinations in 6 months and all this weird stuff. But it also, that made me think, okay, well, if I'm starting basically from scratch like a baby, I'm going to do everything right for my body. I am going to build up an incredibly strong foundation where everything is balanced. I'm going to just, I mean, I ate so well before, but now that I have my appetite back, like I'm going to eat everything, you know, organic and all the right way and cut out anything that could possibly, you know, lead to cancer. So it gives me this platform where I feel like I'm starting from scratch, but I'm going to build up doing everything right so that I not only, you know, stay cancer free, but I thrive, you know, for another 50 years. So that's kind of the goal. And the hip is so much better. I just started running. I ran 30 minutes today, very slowly, but that was like the biggest miracle and victory. And Beck and I were like jumping up and down. So yeah, the hip is better. And I hope to keep it that way by really taking care of my body and doing all the right things.
Gosh, it's just amazing, isn't it? Like what you just described is just absolutely incredible what they can do now. It blows my mind. And I love the way that you're looking at it. It's like, okay, it's almost like Siri take 2. Here we go. Version 2. New and improved, which is even scarier for everybody else out there. It's unreal. I mean, I just think that's absolutely, I'm still in shock. You know, you're basically working off this umbilical cord of a 6-month, you know, that's
crazy.
Just absolutely, yeah, isn't it?
I have black curly hair now, Greg. So here's the other crazy thing. You know, I used to have flat as a board hair, like so flat and straight, and it was like a light brown. I have black hair and it's curly, and it's like, whatever you want me to have, God, I'll take it. I'm alive. I'll take the curls and the black hair.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. Look, thank you for sharing all of that. And I really appreciate, you know, starting this episode by going through that. Because I think it's one of the most inspiring and empowering stories that we can all hear and learn from. So thank you. What I want to do now is you touched on, you know, you started the sport at 23, but I'd love to wind the clock back and when did you sort of first find your passion for endurance sports? Were you an athlete before you turned 23?
Yeah. So my whole life I was up until that point, I was a field hockey, ice hockey, and lacrosse player. And I played varsity in all 3 of those at Brown University and loved it and did really well. So that was great. So I knew how to sprint up and down a field. I knew how to chase a puck. I knew all those things, but I really had no real endurance background. I certainly didn't know how to swim. But when a friend of mine asked me to come watch her at a triathlon, first of all, I had no clue what a triathlon was. But I showed up and I was just in awe of all these people because they were different sizes, different ages, different, you know, races, different ability levels. But every single one of them was just digging so deep. And it was like they were discovering themselves through the challenge of the swim and the bike and the run. And I thought, my God, this is incredible because I was at a place where I so wanted to figure out like who I was. I had just recently, I'll make this short, but I just recently discovered that I was gay. And that was like a big bomb dropping on me. You know, it's not like, oh, yay, you know, great. I'm gay. And my dad had found out and rejected me. We have a great relationship now. There's a very happy ending. But basically, you know, he called me and said, somebody told me you're gay. Like I couldn't possibly have a daughter that's gay. I beg you, sir, you tell me right now that this isn't true. And I said, Dad, I'm sorry. It's true. I'm gay. Please just love me anyway. And he hung up the phone and I didn't hear from him for the next 2 years. And I was devastated. But there was a gift in this because like his rejection made me feel like everything I had accomplished up until that point in time meant absolutely nothing now that I was gay. And so it left me feeling like, my God, I need to prove to myself, most importantly, that even as a gay woman, I can achieve something spectacular, that I can make a difference in this world, that I can inspire people. Like it became this almost like a desperation. And it was soon after that I watched that race and I thought, what a perfect way to discover like what I'm made of and to prove to myself that I'm strong and capable and can be inspiring. And so the gift in his rejection was that it gave me this incredible will and this determination and this why behind, wanting to make this happen. And, we all have to kind of look back at times we've been rejected or hurt or disappointed. Like so often that is what has given us that strength, that will, that why that powers us through to achieving these things that seem impossible.
But again, that's your, I don't know if it's in your DNA or what, but it tends to me, what I'm hearing is that in your life, when you get these massive slaps in the face, it's you take one road and many others, most others might actually turn the other way and fall in a heap and a slump and look for other, whereas you, I don't know what's in your DNA, but there's definitely a fighter in there. There's definitely a warrior that not everybody has, by the way. I think this is, I actually have a DNA doctor coming on in the next episode, and I'm really looking forward to honing in on what makes a champion athlete. And so I think there's something in you, a drive that what I'm picking up on, and we're only 17 minutes into this conversation, is that if we want the best out of Siri Lindley, we better knock her down. It's like I said to Timothy O'Donnell, and I'm not making light of your life by any means. I don't mean it like that. And I had T.O. on the show, and I, obviously, T.O. very well. And every time he's gone to Ironman Hawaii and done well, he's had catastrophe right beforehand. And so I said, come 2021, Kona, I'll come and chop his foot off or something, and then he'll probably win. But my point is with that is it seems like there's this underlying theme amongst great athletes that sometimes they go, right, you're going to take this away from me? Fine. I'm going to give it back tenfold. It's like this, and I think it's a really inspiring for people to hear that, look, for all of us, we're all dealing with setbacks and hardships at times. And there's an attitude we can have in that moment that we can transform ourselves to move forward in a positive direction. And you've been a fantastic role model on that. So moving a little bit forward, when was it within the sport of triathlon that you were like, I got some ability here. I got some talent. I'm a reasonable athlete.
Well, first of all, just to what you just said, because that was really great. I believe that everyone has the ability to be that fighter and to take a bad situation and have it empower them. And that's just, it's making a choice. It's making the decision. It's disciplining your focus. So I do believe that we all, and I can't wait to hear what your DNA doctor says. That you can choose who's in charge in your life, what part of you, whether it's a warrior or the wimp, you get to choose who's going to be in charge. But when did I find out? Well, when I started, Greg, my first race, I came out to Colorado and I humiliated myself. Like I'll never forget. Like truly, I got to the desk, the registration desk, and they're like, what is your 100-meter time? Because the swim was in a pool, and I'm like, 100-meter time? I don't even understand like what that means. Like, and the lines building, and everybody's getting frustrated because you know how anal triathletes are going into a race. But I couldn't figure out what she wanted from me. And she's like, is it 130, 125, 120, 115? I'm like, 115. It's 115. I had no clue what 100-meter time even was. And so I was in this lane with like these huge guys with triangular, chests. And I, of course, being the dork that I am, because I am at heart very much a dork, I'm first in line, my toes are curling over the side of the pool, the gun goes off, I jump in, and within like 5 seconds, I was just being like just pushed around and dunked into the water, and it was like horrendous because I didn't know how to swim. But the best part was that literally, when I had finished 4 lengths, everyone else was already out and on the bike. So I had the whole lane to myself, which was brilliant. But anyways, I got on the bike and I, felt like I was climbing Mount Everest. It turns out the course was like completely flat. And on the run, I I did what I knew. I sprinted for as long as I could until I was hunched over, like gagging and coughing and trying to get my breath back, and then sprinting again another 100 meters until I had to stop and gag. And I had my helmet on like half the time. And I finished the race literally in last place. And my mom was at the finish line. She had everything packed up. She's like, "Oh, great job. You did it, honey. Let's go have lunch." And I was like, "Mom, like the awards are at 1:00. We can't leave yet." And she looked at me like, "My God, my daughter actually thinks she's getting an award today." But we waited, and I most certainly didn't get an award. But what I did get is, oddly, that night, I said to my mom, "Mom, I am going to be the best in the world in the sport." And she tried not to laugh. She tried not to cry. She didn't know what to say. She thought it was just ridiculous. But she said, "Okay, honey, I'll support you. But if it doesn't look like it's working out, promise me you'll stop." And that declaration was ridiculous, Greg. I mean, how ridiculous. I had humiliated myself. People were laughing. They felt sorry for me. I was pitied. But I had never felt so alive in my entire life. And I thought, there has to be something to this. And I was willing to just, like every athlete out there, this, you're one of the hardest workers I've ever seen in this sport. You're just willing to do whatever it takes to make this happen. And it was probably, I moved out to Boulder, Colorado, and Jane Scott, she's one of the best swim coaches. She's Dave Scott's sister. She used to throw me in these lanes that were way faster than I could ever manage. And she said, "Just hang on as long as you can and then pull to the side." And that's what I would do. I would just hang on as long as I could until I had to pull to the side, and then I get back on again. But it was in 1996, I believe. Actually 1995, and I was in Mexico at the World Championships, and I got on the podium. I think I was in third place, and I'll never forget, I went out to the beach after the race, and Karen Smyers was there, and she was like my hero. She was out on the beach drinking a beer, and I went up and I introduced myself like a dork, and she asked how I went, and I said, "Oh, well, I told myself that if I won today, I was going to turn pro, but I only came in third, so I got to wait until, one day I win the age group World Championship." And she said, "Oh, Siri, that's ridiculous. You need to turn pro now. You got on the podium. And when you turn pro, that's going to push you enough. You're going to see how far you have to go, and it's going to really motivate you, and you will perform so much better." So it was due to her, her encouraging me, that I turned pro that following year. And my first race was that race in Pucón, Chile. And somehow I went out there, and I was so excited. I traveled to this other country, and I won that race. And that was the first time where I thought, wow, maybe this can happen. Maybe I'm not going to be the best in the world, but maybe I can actually make a living out of this, or at least survive doing this.
I love that. I'm going to be a world champion. And
how embarrassing.
Well, no, you know what? I think you're the third guest I've had that at a young age had said the similar thing. Helen Jenkins is one. She was talking to a high school career advisor, and they're saying, "What university you want to go to? What are you going to do?" And she's like, "I'm going to be a world champion triathlete." And she kind of described it. Suddenly those words came out of her mouth, and she's like, "Oh, yeah. I shouldn't have said that out loud." And then it was I can't remember how many years later. It might have been similar to you. It was kind of like that journey of 8 years, and there she was in Vancouver winning the World Championships, and then she won the World Series. When it became a series, she won. So there's something to this, and I know. Look, for every young kid that's saying I'm going to be a world champion, there's 1 in 1,000 that actually makes it happen. But I do love hearing the ones where it actually did happen, and I think that's just extraordinary. And you mentioned Karen Smyers, and she's somebody I should have on this show. Actually, Karen, one of the most beautiful people in the world, and probably one of the greatest triathletes on the planet. She won Kona. She won the ITU World Champs. She's basically went on a winning streak there in the early 90s, which was just incredible. So to have her in your corner in 1995 in Cancun kind of go, and I think it was 95 where she did the double. I think she won.
She did. Yes,
that's right. She won the Ironman World Championships, and she won the Cancun World Championship. And what was interesting about Cancun that year for the elites was that was the first year that we had draft legal. And so she had to take herself from basically a time trialist type athlete into being a draft legal athlete only about 4 weeks after. I think Cancun was like early November, and Kona is always at the start of October. So anyway, that's Karen Smyers, and I just wanted to touch on her because she's just such an incredible person to have come up to you and say, let's go professional. And then at what point were you, I mean, it's one thing to turn pro, and it's an expression we hear in the US. I'd never heard of it in Australia. It was kind of like I grew up and suddenly if you enter open and you make money, you just are, so we never really turned pro. We just were pro. If you made money. But you turned pro. At what point were you like, okay, let's go all in here? Were you kind of a hobbyist professional for a little bit and then you had to pull the trigger? At what point was there any transition there?
So I was never a hobbyist. I've always had the attitude, and that's why I thought I needed to win an age group world championship before I could be deserving of racing pro. So already I'd put this thing on my back saying, geez, Siri, you didn't really earn this turning pro. So you better do something about it and be good and make it work. Because I am not one that believes people should turn pro just to say they're a pro and then suffer, at the very back. Like as long as they're working so hard to make it and to get better and to prove and to get faster, like that's what it's all about. And that's kind of how I was in it, but I took it so seriously, like from day one. And if you have Karen on the show, Greg, don't tell her. I'm going to just add a little something about this manifesting and saying I want it to be the best. There was this picture of her after that year when she won Ironman and short course world championships, and she was on the cover of Triathlete magazine, and she's running down the beach, and I literally cut her head off the picture and put my head on it and framed it and changed the words Karen Smyers world champion to Siri Lindley world champion. I'm not kidding. I did this in 1996, but this is actually a tool that I think works. That's why I'm sharing it, even though I'm embarrassed. It's kind of embarrassing. I don't want to tell her. But and literally 8 years later, Triathlete magazine had a cover with me on it with the same thing. It said on top of the world, Siri Lindley, and there I was in almost the same position. So that was pretty incredible. But when I started racing pro, Greg, like I took it so seriously as every athlete does. But I had vowed to myself that if I wasn't competitive, that I didn't belong. And so I knew, I was trying to model the best athletes in the sport. I at the time, McKeely Jones was winning everything. And I literally moved to Australia because I knew that's where she trained. That's where you train. That's where all these incredible, the best in the world were training. So I moved to Australia, found out which pool she was swimming at, swam in her lane and hung on as long as I possibly could. We ended up being friends. And I ended up renting out a room in her house with your wife. Actually. I was
about to say, this story sounds very familiar.
Yeah. So Laura and I shared this tiny little bedroom, and we were training with McKeely, and I modeled her. I thought if I do what she does and understand how she thinks and how she eats and how she recovers, this must take me to a whole new level because I'm doing what the very best does. Modeling is so powerful. And it took me to a whole new level, modeling her. And I learned so much from her, and I'm so grateful. And I'm sure Laura did too. And Laura and I learned from each other also. Yeah. It was brilliant. And then after that, I started coming in, fourth place in World Cup races, which was huge for me. It was amazing, but I kept coming in fourth, and you can relate to this sometimes, coming in fourth and fourth and fourth. And then I was like, what do I need to do to get to that next level? Like there was something missing. And it was time for the Olympic trials. And here's something, coaches out there or athletes that use visualization. I totally think it's the most powerful thing, but you have to be aware of how you're visualizing. So what I did for 365 days leading into the Olympic trials, I visualized the perfect race, like literally diving in. I'm on the front pack. I'm on their feet. Everything's going beautifully. I get out of the water. I'm in the front pack, and everything's perfect. And every night I saw that same exact thing, finishing, crossing the line, making the Olympic team. Well, on that day, the gun went off. And within the first 30 seconds, I got dunked and kicked and went under the water, and I lost the front pack. And in my mind, it's like all I knew was that perfect race, that I was going to have today. And I couldn't respond because I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't, in my visualizations, prepare for overcoming an obstacle during the race. And I choked. I literally choked. I was going as hard as I possibly could, but I was going backwards. Got on the bike. I was going as hard as I could, and packs were passing me. And I quit. It was awful. I didn't finish. And it was the worst feeling in the entire world. And I'll never forget, I knew that this one decision was going to change my life. And that decision was going to be, when somebody comes up to me and asks me what happened, what am I going to say? And the first person came up and they said, what happened? Are you sick? Did you have a flat tire? Did you have a mechanical? What's wrong? And I just said, I choked. I completely choked. I had visualized the perfect race for 365 days. And when one thing happened that didn't fit that script, I completely just choked. I was paralyzed. Mm. And it's a big lesson to visualize things going wrong and overcoming them successfully, and being calm and having your wits about you and being able to handle it. Like, that's important to face those scenarios as well in your visualization, so that when they do happen, you totally know how you're going to respond. But I knew that in owning what happened, that was going to open up what I was going to be capable of in the future. If I gave an excuse, if I said, oh yeah, I've got this little injury, or my bike wasn't working properly, or I came up with an excuse, that was going to leave me powerless. And that was going to leave me also feeling horrible about myself and lacking belief in myself if I've got to make up an excuse. So I wanted to own it. And it changed my entire career, because that was the turning point for me. I decided, I need to make some decisions in how I'm, tackling this plan to toughen me up and get me to that next level. And that's when, I knew about Brett Sutton. He was your coach as well for a while. Like, at the time, he was just the best coach in the world. I still think he is one of the best coaches in the world. And I thought, proximity is power. Who you surround yourself. Are you surrounding yourself with people that bring you down and don't challenge you to become better? Or are you surrounding yourself with people that, push you to all new levels and bring out the best in you? And, if I could get him to coach me, I'm not only going to have the best coach in the world, but I'm going to be training side by side with world champions and Olympic medalists. Like, for sure, that's going to take me to the next level. And when I got in front of him, he had seen me race in Noosa, and he remembers me because all you guys had finished the race. And I was like running in like 29th place, and he was like walking home to his hotel. And he saw me, and I was absolutely like destroying myself to come in 28th place. And he remembered that. And he said, I like that. That's hunger. That I was like, it didn't matter that I was in 29th place. I was going to destroy myself to come in 28th. So he took me on, and, it was the most humbling and scary experience of my life, because I was just the worst in the entire squad. Like, I got my ass kicked to oblivion every single day. And every day, the sessions he would give me were just like, seemed impossible. They seemed brutal. They were terrifying. They'd make me cry. But every single day, I would just do the best that I could, and I would find a way, and I proved to myself every day that what seemed impossible is really possible. So it was a brilliant situation for me, and it built up my confidence, and it really showed me that we are so much more powerful than we think we are.
It's amazing. Yeah, I have the same kind of stories with Brett. I'm sorry to interrupt your train of
thought. No, I love it.
Because there is this, you think you're training hard, and then it's like, wow, I can actually do more than I ever thought I could. And I just want to interrupt a little bit there, because I do want to touch on a couple of things that you said. And the first is, I think this show, what it's largely about is, I felt throughout my career that learning from the best and being surrounded by the best was the most empowering thing I could do for myself to get the most out of myself. And And hearing you say that when you flew to Australia, and I've heard it quote unquote from Laura exactly the same as you. I had to fly to Australia because that's where the best of the world were. That's where they were racing in the off season, well, so-called off season, and I could stay with Michele Jones, who is arguably one of the greatest female triathlete of all time, with winning Kona and silver medal at the Olympics and plethora of gold medals in world championships. Here are you and Laura bunking up in her house, living with her and watching everything that she did. And I just think that was, for both you and Laura, just such a commendable step in your athletic careers. So that's step one. And then step two is going, okay, here am I coming fourth and top tens, and I'm becoming known as the consistent athlete. And I feel your pain. That's what I was in the late 90s. It was this consistent athlete. And then I look at your resume after you just joined Brett. And I forgive me, I don't know the exact date you joined Brett, but if I look at your resume and I see you winning on the 12th of August, so about 1 month before the first Olympic Games in Sydney, you win the Lausanne ITU World Cup. Now, what's interesting about this Lausanne ITU World Cup is who comes second and third to you. So firstly, this is your first World Cup win. I think I'm correct in saying that. But yes. Bridget McMahon was second, Michele Jones in third. Now, 1 month later, Bridget McMahon wins the gold medal in Sydney. Michele Jones comes second. Did you know that? Maybe did you know that, or did I just rub salt in the wound? I'm sorry.
No, Greg, I did know that, and you just gave me. I literally have goosebumps all over my body. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what happened, and but I wouldn't change it for the world, because if I had made the Olympic Games, I wouldn't have made the decisions I made. If I had made the Olympics, I wouldn't have thought I need something more. I need to make a change. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So. Yeah.
No, I get it. I have when I missed the same Olympics, hometown Olympics, and I'm sorry to rabbit on about myself if people have heard the story, but basically I was ranked number 2 in the world going into Sydney Olympics. I'd won the Australian Championships in 98 and 99. I just felt very comfortable and confident. Anyway, was left off the Australian team. And when I say left off, these days I'm quite comfortable with it. I wasn't prepared. When I look back now, no, I wasn't ready. I didn't deserve it. Anyway, but at the time, it felt like I deserved it, and it wasn't given it to me. But had I gone to those Olympics, I would not have been moved to Victoria, Canada, where Simon Whitfield asked me to come and train with him to get him ready for the Olympics. And it was in Victoria that I met Laura. Now, if you ask me, would I rather go to the Sydney Olympics, possibly medal, possibly not, who knows, or meet the woman of my dreams and marry her, and 20 years later, it's a no-brainer, right? I mean, those decisions, they hurt at the time, but it's amazing when we reflect and go, wow, thank goodness that life threw me that way. But now I wanted to look at, Lausanne was just the kickstart. I have your ITU World Cup resume. I can look at it here, and it's just win after win after win. And if you're not winning, you're on the podium for the next 2 years. Absolutely incredible. I think I've counted, 13 World Cups almost in a row, with a World Championship in the middle of it in Edmonton. Tell me about that phase in your life where it was just, whoa, I'm here. This is what I told Mum I would do 8 years ago, and here I am. Just remarkable.
It was a dream come true, Greg, and I truly thank you for sharing your story, because I truly believe that life is happening for us, not to us. And that's been kind of a theme in my entire life. And your story shows that. My story shows that. But yeah, winning that race in Lausanne, it was an absolute dream come true. And one of the things that shifted when I went to Brett is, and we need to pay attention to this as coaches, is figuring out, are you connected with your why and your mission behind wanting to win and wanting to become great? And before the 2000 Olympics and the Olympic trials, I had forgotten that I was doing this because I loved it. And it was this incredible way to find myself and discover what I'm made of. I lost track of that. And now it started becoming, okay, I need to make a paycheck. I need to make the team. I need to, get sponsors. I need, and all of this. And that was not energizing me in a positive way. That was really kind of putting a negative spin on everything and taking away of my freedom to truly perform. And when I went to Brett, I'll never forget, he said, okay, you are retiring starting now. And I was like, what do you mean retiring? He's like, no, you're going to look at this differently. And so I thought about it and I thought, my God, I was 23 years old when I started. I didn't even know how to swim. Seriously, didn't know how to swim. I was so terrible. And I'm actually at the level where I can try to qualify for an Olympic Games. My God, look how far I've come. And I started celebrating that instead of like, look how far I need to go. It was like, look how far I've come. And I was like, wow, I'm proud of myself. Like I've worked so hard and I failed over and over again. But each time I got back up, I dusted myself off. I changed my approach. I learned new things and I made it further. And this gave me such an intense sense of gratitude to whatever you believe in. For me, it was God. It was like, I am so grateful that I have been blessed with the abilities and this will and this determination and this relentlessness and that I've come so far. Like, I just want to celebrate these gifts. And so my whole attitude and what I would think about going into a race is that I want to be able to show my thanks for these gifts that I've been blessed with. And so I'm going to go out there and when the gun goes off, I'm going to leave everything I have inside of me out on that race course. That's all I want to do is show my thanks by using everything I have inside of me. And that shows that I appreciate and acknowledge the gifts that I've been blessed with. And the minute I changed that, Greg, the minute that became my focus, I started winning. And it wasn't that, but it was Brett's training, obviously. I mean, he knew that what I needed was confidence and belief in myself. And even though the training he gave me, it really, as a coach now, and I look back, it made no sense physically what he was giving me because it was just out of control, like craziness, but it makes perfect sense to me when I understand that his approach was a mental approach.
Of course.
And his approach was to throw me something impossible every day and to tell me that I needed to find a way to get it done. And knowing me that I would do my best to find a way and I'd find a way and I proved it was possible, like that day after day after day after day builds this confidence and this courage inside of you. And, I used to show up at races like barely even able to walk. I was so sore. But the best gift about that is that I could not have expectations about how I was going to race. I just hoped that when the gun went off, I'd be able to take that first step, on the pontoon.
Yeah, I love that. Brett did that with a lot of his athletes. Just a quick mini break before we get back to the show. I just want to remind you guys to go check out athleticgreens.com/Greg. Sign up and get your free 20 daily travel packets with your first order of $79 added value. That's athleticgreens.com/Greg. I was coached by Brett in the late 90s there. And for a lot of athletes that did struggle with the mental anxiety or expectations or whatever it was, he did have this ability. Firstly, yes, we would all get very fit. He was very good at getting us all very fit. But for some athletes that maybe struggled with racing, I didn't have a problem with racing, but for some that did, I remember some of the girls would do a 6K swim the morning of an afternoon race, and that wasn't, obviously it's not a fitness gain. It's having somebody go, well, I really don't have any expectation because obviously I'm tired, blah, blah, blah. So now I can just go and be free. And the number of people I've spoken to on this episode where they had this breakthrough race or they had this incredible moment because they were free to just go and see what happens. There was zero expectation on themselves. There was zero fear or doubt. It was just go, whatever. And that freeing is really something incredible that once you get used to doing that, it's amazing how you can then tap into it. And it comes into that almost learning how to win. I've talked about on this show a bit where I wasn't a born winner. And Miles Stewart. Miles Stewart, Australian, he's the CEO of Triathlon Australia right now, but, world champion back in 91 and just one of the most phenomenal athletes I ever raced against for 10, 15 years. And I always looked at Miles. He's just a young guy. He won world championships, the Open World Championships at 18. out sprinting Rick Wells and Mike Pigg, who were the two megastars at that time. And he went past them on the Gold Coast in Australia as an 18-year-old kid. He just knew how to win. Yeah. And I never felt like I was a Miles Stewart. I always felt like, as Chris McCormack put it nicely, I had an imposter syndrome, that to some degree I didn't really belong, and it took me a long time, maybe I'm a very slow learner, to learn how to win. I think I started learning to win in my mid-30s. I'd been in the sport almost 20 years, and then I started winning. It was like, wow. And so what I appreciate about your story with Brett there is this ability to help you remove expectations and allow you to show your gifts, and I love the gratitude. I love that. It's something I practice a lot now when I get frustrated with the whole COVID-19 and the world going mad. I kind of, every time you wash your hands, Greg, practice gratitude.
Yeah.
It really helps bring down my blood pressure. So I think I just love all of that. And so take me through, I really want to hear Edmonton ITU World Championships, 22nd of July, 2001. The day that happened 8 years after you mentioned it, 9 years after you mentioned it to your mum that you're going to be a world champion, that day must have just, everything came together. Tell me about that day.
Yeah, and this is a perfect example, Greg, of how when we change our story, we change our lives. And I'm kind of made me think about it was you saying that you weren't really a winner, but then, you started winning when you were 30, and your story now became, I am a winner, because then you started winning everything, right? And unbelievable. But this can be looked upon in different ways. Basically, I didn't know if I was even in a race, because even though I was ranked number 2 in the world, I had missed our USA Federation's race that would qualify me for the World Championships. I had an Achilles injury, and I didn't want to risk that because I was wanting to be at my best for World Championships. And when I got to Edmonton, the USA people said, "You're not racing. You didn't qualify at our qualifier." And I was like, "But I'm number 2 in the world. Like, please let me race." And I kind of fought it with them and talked to the ITU, and thank God the night before the race, the ITU said that I could race. That's actually why I did the Aquathon World Championship and won that. So I had that World Championship, which satisfied me, because I thought I'm probably not racing this weekend. But the ITU let me race. So I was number 61, my spot in transition was all the way out at the back, but I was so excited that I had this opportunity to race. And I had probably one of my worst swims. I was in, the last quarter of the entire field.
Yes, but in fairness, let me interrupt. Edmonton was always the worst. If you had a good ranking on the Edmonton start line, you basically got a 10-meter lead over the person down the other end of the beach. So sorry to interrupt, but number 61, no, right. you would have had the worst spot on that start line.
Oh, it was the worst. So thank you for saying that. That makes me feel better, Greg. But I came out in near last place. Now, up until this point in time, my story when I would have a bad swim was bad swim, race is over. Because at that level, you're in a world championship, forget it. You're not going to catch up and be able to, get on the podium. But on this day, I had trained so hard for so long. And I'm like, I'm changing this. I see this now. It's not like I was going through this in my mind. But I said, okay, you know what? Bad swim. But my race isn't over. This is an opportunity. I've worked so hard. Put my head down on the bike. I'm going to go harder than I've ever ridden before in my life and see how close I can get to the front. So instead of this bad swim being race is over, I changed the meaning of the bad swim to being an opportunity to show my fitness and prove to myself, that all my hard work has paid off. So I get on the bike and I am literally just destroying myself. And I catch the third pack, and then I catch a second pack. And then by the last lap, I'm in the front group. And I'm just just high on adrenaline. There had been a crash up at the front, and I think Nicole Hackett was out. And the front pack had caught the front four, Loretta Harrop and Sheila Taumina and Barb Lindquist. And I'm like, my God.
And Laura, I think.
And Laura, of course. Absolutely.
No, I'm just teasing. Go on.
Superstar, absolute superstar. So we catch the front, and I'll never forget. And McKeely, when you listen to this, I hope you know, I think you are one of the most incredible athletes this sport has ever seen. And this fired me up, and I appreciate that. I got to the front, and McKeely was there, and she knew how far back I was. And she looks at me and she's like, well, that was stupid, as if to say, like, you've just biked your head off, like you're not going to be able to run. And I had so much respect for her, like so much respect, but something struck a chord in me, and I took a deep breath and I looked at her and I said, hey, McKeely, ready to run? And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that to like the best athlete in the world. So I'm thinking that we get off the bike, I take off like a bat out of hell. And McKeely's like right on my shoulder. And I just was like, oh my God, I've never run so hard in my entire life. And I thought she was there the entire time. Like I heard her breathing. I call it phantom breathing, because sometimes when you're at the front of the race, I don't know if you can, if this has happened to you, but you almost hear someone breathing on your back. And that kept me just pushing and pushing and pushing. And I crossed the line, world champion, Greg. And it was an absolute, it was the impossible dream coming true. But had I stuck to my story that if I have a bad swim in a race, my race is over, I would have just given up and this would have never happened. But I took a chance on me. Like races can start horribly and finish miraculously. It's what you choose to focus on. And that focus is everything.
Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that, you haven't mentioned, you talk about the phantom breathing. You almost won by a minute, which you could have slowed up a fair bit. And I'm sure you slowed up a little bit at the finishing line. I hope you did.
Well, I didn't. You know why? And I'm sure Brett's done this to you. First of all, I saw my mom on the last lap and she's like, you're winning, Siri, you're winning. So I got all excited and I was ready to like kind of back off a little. And like 50 meters later, there's Brett and he yells at me with this, like, he sounded so angry. He's like, you haven't won anything yet. And I'm like, oh my God, there must be people coming. So I dug even deeper. But him, he wanted me to, go as fast as I could the entire way so I could see, where I'm at. So I appreciate that.
But it's not even about the win with Brett a lot of the time. It's about the effort.
Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And then so from that race, did that race kind of change your perception of yourself, your life? Was that a dramatic turning point? You'd already been winning a fair bit up until that race, a couple of World Cups, and then you kept winning for all throughout 2002. But that race, was that a big change?
It was massive, but I'm going to be just so honest here, even if it sounds horrible, but I was ready to retire on that day because like I'd found what I was looking for. And what I found was like this appreciation for myself and finally like a love for myself because I appreciated how hard I worked and that I made this dream come true. And it was like, now I just want to like, share everything that I experienced and help other people do this. But as we all know, we are our own biggest critics. And what would have happened if I retired is that further on down the line, I'd say, oh, what if I just got lucky? Or what if that was just a fluke? And I'd start judging what happened and questioning it and not believing that I'd earned it. I knew that I would be my own biggest critic. So I literally right after that race said, okay, I'm going to finish this year and, put together another year where I can hopefully, race to my utmost potential and then I'm going to retire. But that way I can prove that I'm the real deal. And it's not just a fluke. It wasn't just a lucky day. So what that did, it gave me an enormous amount of confidence in myself that, wow, I can't believe I just won a world championship because I used to just look up to every athlete that I was racing, all of them. I was like, my God, you're so amazing. And now suddenly, on that day, I was in that top spot. But I tried to always understand that my biggest competitor was always going to be myself, my own mind, my own beliefs, my own, everything. I was going to be my own biggest competitor. And so every race I went out just wanting to master my own mindset, wanting to master my game. and, hoping that would lead to a great result, which thank God it did. I feel so grateful for how things went, but that momentum that you get from a win where you prove to yourself, and it's important. I think it's so important for athletes. Sometimes we win and then we just forget about it and we move on and we, go into the next race, feeling like, oh, I hope I can do it. It's like, celebrate those victories inside and take note of what you just accomplished, like appreciate it, embrace it, give yourself a pat on the back, because that's how we build momentum, like recognizing, acknowledging, appreciating, and then building upon that. But I don't know about you, Greg. I mean, tell me, like when you won a race, did you celebrate it? Did you really appreciate it? Was it just...
It's funny that there's races where it's not that you expect to win, but you go in very confident. And there's been a few where I've kind of crossed the line and gone, okay, good. It's almost like tick the box. And I'm not taking it for granted. I was just that I knew my place. I knew mentally, physically, emotionally, I was in a good place and ready to deliver a great performance. But then you have those races where they're unexpected, where they're like you mentioned, maybe a come from behind where you haven't done that before or whatever it is. And suddenly you cross the line and there's this euphoria inside you where you're like, whoa, there's a different kind of winning. There's that unexpected or expected. And those unexpected wins that I had, and there was several throughout my career, but there was a few where it was just like, wow, that I was so emotionally high. And this is one thing that Laura and I always worked on, is managing our emotions, never going too high, never going too low, that I recognized the emotional high that was almost uncontrollable high, that I would almost have to sit at home for a few days with my feet up and do nothing. And it sounds weird, but it just let it sit there. It almost just let it sit and sink in. And one of those was 2011. My last really, really big win was the Hy-Vee Triathlon. It was a big money race.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
And I just wanted to try and win a couple of bike preems. And all of a sudden I opened this lead. Anyway, I won the race. And it was just this euphoria inside me that I was almost exhausted for a week, that I canceled any other race coming up because I was like, no, I'm going to be flat. I just need to let this one sink in. And it was. But there are others where it was kind of like, I remember, I think Ishigaki back in 2001 or something, and I can't remember what year I won it, and Chris Hill and I had sort of broken away, and I just felt confident that I had Chris, for the final part of the run. And no disrespect to Chris Hill, he won the World Cup Series in 2001, one of the great competitors that I ever raced against, but I just felt that I had his measure for the 400-meter sprint to the line. And so that was one where you cross the line and go, okay, box ticked. I believed I could do it, and I did it, and that was nice. So they're the two extremes, but I get what you're saying in that ability when you win a race, take a moment, or not even win, when you have a race or have a moment in life, appreciate. Okay, here's a side story for you. Last night, my 2-year-old daughter, we have massive storms down here in Florida at the moment. 1 a.m., she's learned how to get out of her crib and open the door and come in, and has to hop in bed with daddy. Now, I could be, okay, my 2-year-old daughter's woken me up and now I'm all, I'm not going to sleep for an hour or two or whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. Or I could have the attitude, isn't this the greatest moment in life? That my 2-year-old daughter is curling up and dad, the protector of the big storm, is just, and there's, my point is with all of that is kind of like being present, being in the moment, and not allowing these moments to just be fleeting. Recognize that these are moments in life that you get to have and you get to keep. And the more you reflect on them, the deeper they sink into your DNA, the more you get to hold them for longer. So I appreciate exactly what you said about Edmonton, that World Championships, understanding that I've done what I needed to do. But okay, I'll validate it to myself for another year that wasn't a fluke. Now, the transition then, knowing that you'd done what you'd wanted to do as an athlete. And I think you then channeled, you had one strength as an athlete, and I think you have great gratitude for that. But then I think you really found your true passion, your true calling, and giving to others and helping others reach their potential. What was that transition like? And was it something that you always thought you would go into?
I definitely, I wouldn't say I did know I was going to go into coaching, but I must have, because when I crossed that line, I remember thinking, my God, like now I can help other people that think this is impossible. so I definitely was destined to go into coaching. And I believe that my whole journey through the sport as an athlete is what gave me, my belief that there's this incredible quote, Greg, it's by Michelangelo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I saw the angel in the marble and I carved until I set her free. I used to, with every athlete that I would take on, I would think about that quote, and I would, no matter whether they were a pure beginner or already a great athlete, I wanted to know that I saw something inside of them that if we chipped away at it would release something extraordinary. And I'm someone that, because of my own experience in the sport, I believe anything and everything is possible. And if the athlete is willing to believe that too, and take the time and be patient and tackle every aspect of the sport, not just physically, but, mindset and emotions and spiritually, all these things. That's what I would look for in coaching, and someone that really, had that same kind of dream. So all my mistakes, all the things I did wrong, all the, obstacles I had to overcome in my own mind, like having overcome those things and ultimately being able to succeed and to retire at number one in the world, that was very helpful, because that kind of gave me some, help me start my coaching business. But I just felt so ready to share what I had learned with other people. And one of the most important things I thought I would need to do is be really vulnerable as a coach, to share my failures, to share my fears, to share the fact of how anxious I would get. Because when you're an athlete, if you think you're the only one that gets nervous, or you're the only one that gets a bit fearful before the gun goes off, like that makes you feel weak, and that makes you lose your confidence. So I wanted every athlete I coach to understand that, like, it's normal to feel anxious. It's normal to feel some fear. And these are the tools that I'm going to teach you so that you can overcome that and have it, strengthen you, not weaken you. So I started coaching immediately. And I think in the beginning, I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to do what worked for me. This is what Brett did with me. And for like the first couple of months, I was kind of like training like Brett. And I thought to myself, this doesn't feel right. Like, I don't want to be a coach, even though Brett is amazing. I love him. He's incredible. But I wanted to be myself. I wanted to be a fearlessly authentic leader. And so I had to kind of come up with my own ideas on how I wanted to coach. Of course, using a lot of the same philosophies as Brett, like having a squad, having everyone move to Boulder, Colorado to train with me in person. Like, that was huge. But I really wanted to be very authentic about my philosophies, my principles, and my approach. And that was the big step that I took. I'm sorry, I totally went off track with what your question was.
No, that's exactly what my question was. I think I think you're moving into exactly the area I want to talk about. And I think listening to you, over this past hour and knowing you for the last 20 years, your natural ability to help people with mindset strategies, with mental strategies, is just absolutely incredible. And the way that you articulate it, and you can, because you've been there and you can understand it, I think that makes you the great coach that you are. Because there's no doubt, when we look at endurance sports, and especially in the high performance, and we're trying to optimize an individual athlete, almost the physical, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? We could throw, okay, you got to do more aerobic work, you should break it up into these kind of intervals, or you should train like Zatopek or Lydiard, and I'm mentioning all these kind of famous coaches and athletes of the past, or the Brett Sutton model. There's a million ways physically to get the most out of somebody for an endurance sport. But that ability to day in, day out, get that little bit more from each workout, and get that little bit more from each race. Laura and I put it, when we decided to start coaching ourselves in 03, 04, was we wanted to do it with intent. We believe the word intent is the difference between good and great, right? It's that being intentional about what we did. And that's what you deliver to your athletes, it seems to me. Look, I could tell you to go ride 90 kilometers up around the mountains of Colorado, or I could tell you to do 80 kilometers and do a 10-kilometer time trial in the middle of it. At the end of the day, we're talking about very, very little differences when it comes to physical. But the understanding of the mental approach of what I'm trying to get you to do out of that workout and why it's the right workout is the critical part. Would you say that that's what your gift has been to your athletes, almost more than just the physical program?
Oh yeah, I mean 1,000,000% for sure, and also that, I've always been one. I choose an approach and I believe in it 1,000,000%, and I don't go back, and I kind of demand that from my athletes. It's like, okay, this is how we're going to do things. I need you to believe in it with all your heart, because if you're trying to follow 3 different strategies, I'm going to do this because Brett Sutton says this and Siri says this, so I'll do that, and Greg says this, so I'll do that. You're just going to get yourself up in a mess. And like, I'll never forget when Rinny wanted to do Ironman, and the first thing I said to her is like, how desperately do you want to do this? And she said, really bad. And I said, okay, well, we're going to wait another year or 2, because I feel, for an athlete going into an Ironman, you have to want it so bad, because when the going gets tough in an Ironman, like, you better want to be there. Otherwise, it's going to be super easy to want to stop or give up. So I wanted to build up that hunger for her. And when she told me she wanted to do it and that this was like her big dream, I thought, okay, well, I want to learn, how to coach an Ironman athlete. I'd certainly never done an Ironman before. So I kind of went and talked to all the very best, Mark Allen, Paula Newby-Fraser, and Karen Smyers, McKeely Jones, everybody, and would just ask questions. And then it came down to saying, okay, do I want to coach her like all these people do? Do I want to just do what they're doing, or do I want to create something that I believe in 1,000,000%? And I decided just, like in the beginning, I wanted to be authentic, and I believed I had this plan. I had this idea that I really thought would work for Ironman. So I presented it to Rinny, and we talked it over, and we collaborated on it, and we agreed, like, this is going to be our plan. And we went to the Hawaii Ironman World Championship in 2009, and Rinny had never run a marathon in her life. So this was going to be our first marathon. And I have to admit, and maybe I made this up to motivate me, but I felt like a lot of people were kind of laughing at us, like thinking, here are 2 girls. Rinny's never won a marathon. Siri's never gone over an Olympic distance race. Like, what a joke that they're trying to take on Ironman. But we were so 1,000,000% invested in our plan and committed to it and believing in it with all our hearts. And she went in and came in second and had the run course record on the marathon. And that gave us great confidence. And it's like, okay, we're on to something here like this. And the rest of the story. But I believe that if you're going to have a coach, choose to go all in. It's like getting married. If you're going to be married, go all in. This is like, make it magical, make it amazing. Like, you can't have one foot in and one foot out. So that's something I kind of demand. I think it's so important because, again, there are, and I can't believe I'm using this statement that you said, but there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. I don't want to skin a cat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right? Of course. We can get to your foundations in a moment. I didn't. Now that you've said that back to me, I feel terrible.
Because I just said it too. Because it's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, but you have to pick one of them. And go all in on that is my belief. And obviously, my philosophies and everything change every year. I'm demanding that my athletes are growing and progressing and learning every single day. And I demand the same of myself. I demand that I learn and grow and become a better coach and get better with each and every day and work hard every single day. So things change over time, but whatever your plan is at that time, believe in it 1,000,000%.
I had, talking about growth, I had, as I mentioned, Coach Joel Filiol and Coach Dan Lorang, both incredible coaches and done incredible things. And both of them, when I asked, your coaching philosophies, where did you really learn them from? Both of them kind of said, I've learned them most through the athletes I've worked with. And trial and error and blah, blah, blah. And I've got to this point in my life where I'm starting to, I'm still growing and learning. Is that the same for you? Or is it a combination of everything?
Absolutely. I feel like I am growing and learning every single day. And as a coach, I'm happy to admit also that we learn from our athletes. Like, we're not just the one that's in charge telling everyone what to do. Like I observe each and every athlete, every single day, and their mindset, their strategies, everything they do. And I'm learning from them as well. So I believe you can learn not just from people in the sport, but outside of the sport. I've learned from my horse how to better train my athletes. And I've learned about, how we carry ourselves and the energy we come into things, and whether that serves us or hurts us. And so you can learn all around you. And I'm a voracious, I do love to read. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to yours because I love it, but I love to read and I love to observe. And I believe that the best coaches in the world are wanting to continually learn and grow, because things change. We're evolving as a sport, and we need to kind of keep up with that.
Can I ask you a couple of kind of, with your coaching, the kind of, if I looked at a year as your squad, and I know everybody kind of does their different things accordingly, but do you kind of follow a certain routine or plan throughout the year? And do you work on kind of like doing VO2 work at some stage, or strength work, or conditioning? How do you plan out your year with each of your athletes?
Yeah, I think it's a bit different. It's not like this using periodization. It's very individual for depending on the athletes and what their goals are. But if I could make the most sense out of it and put it like on a whole, off season is super important to me. We don't just do nothing. Like, basically, I give my athletes 2 weeks off in the off season where they are not allowed to swim, bike, and run. And then another 2 weeks where they can do one thing a day, but no swim, bike, or run. And most athletes just panic over this because they're like, oh my God, I'm going to lose everything. But what I see as being so useful in that is that they get reminded of how passionate they are about the sport. They're like, oh my God, please let me swim. Please let me bike. Please let me run. Like, they get this hunger. And I believe hunger is such a huge part of achieving great results in the sport. So I build up their hunger. And then when it's time to get back to work, they're full on, all in, ready to go. And they've done enough during that time. I'm having them do, they can go and do some strength work, mostly like foundation work and mobility work and keeping their core strong. Then I usually start everyone out with a big swim block, because I want my athletes to go into to start up their training again super, super fit. And the way I see it, whether you're an amazing swimmer or someone that really needs to improve their swim, doing a big swim block is going to get you super, super fit. It's also going to help your swim, which is going to help your bike, which is going to help your run. But it's an incredible way to get super fit aerobically, because that aerobic fitness you get from swimming, of course, translates to the bike, of course, translates to the run. And then throwing in a little bit of biking and running along with that. From there, it's focusing on an athlete's weakness and doing different blocks of building up their strength on the bike, or working on their run technique, run form, run fitness. So that's where it becomes very individual. Throughout the year, mobility work and foundational strength work is super important to me. In our training, and this is what I love about the ITU and World Cup racing, is, really preparing for, the swim start. For ITU and World Cup racing, you're planning for the swim start. You're dealing with those nerves. You're working on positioning and your strategy and all of that. And a lot of athletes that do the other distances aren't focusing on that, but it's so incredibly important. Like, it can truly change an athlete's race. If they get a good swim start, they're able to, tap into their full potential. So working a lot on skill-based mindset strategies, preparing for race-like scenarios is super important to me year-round. We train, so off-season training would be a lot more aerobic work, but I have always I don't want my athletes to lose touch with their ability to withstand pain. Okay, not in a bad way, not like I'm torturing them, but I believe that, if you take 3 months off of doing anything that requires you to really push and go hard, I feel like you can lose touch with your ability to push to that level, and that takes a while to come back. So I will sprinkle in the off season. We're mostly doing, strength work, sports specific strength work, like a lot of hills on the bike and hills on the run and longer sessions, lots of strength work in the pool, but sprinkling in sessions, fast speed work, some threshold work, not a lot, like nowhere near what we do in season, but just so they maintain contact with that discomfort and their ability to deal with it. It's like when, people in the regular world, they have a week off work and they go out on vacation and they come back and it's really hard to get back into the rhythm of working again. I kind of relate it to that. Like when we get back to doing the hard work, I don't want to waste time reminding them of how hard they can go or how hard they can push. I want them to already have that inside of them, if that makes sense.
No, I agree with you. I mean, that was much the same as what we would always do, is keep in touch with the VO2 work, keep in touch with the threshold work, leg speed, all of that kind of stuff. Just so it's not so crazy when you start the season. Now, do you start the season with preparation races, or is every race a key race? How do you plan out an athlete's season?
And again, that's really, it's an individual thing.
Yeah.
I have some athletes that will do fewer races, but each race is an A race for them. And then I have other athletes that I really want to give them experience of racing. And so I will set up their plan being, okay, well, your first 2 races are, the first race, I really want you to focus on the bike and being consistent and pushing as hard as you can. The second race, we're going to work on the run. And usually what happens is, because the expectation isn't there that they crush it from start to finish, they end up having these great performances because they're just focusing on one thing that they think we're after for that race. But mentally, like Mirinda is an athlete who she will give everything she has for the World Championship. And that's why so often we didn't do the 70.3 World Championship as well, because I knew that she would dig, as deep as she possibly can. And I didn't want her to empty her reservoir, so soon before the Ironman World Championship, which was obviously her priority. So for someone like her, we would do fewer races, but every race would be pretty important. But then there'd be, Yvonne van Vlerken, who's, I believe, one of the greatest Ironman athletes that has ever lived. She used to race nearly every weekend. So we had to, each race would have a purpose, and then we'd have our A races, and that worked really well for her. So it's definitely an individual thing. And that's something, in the beginning, I did it one way, and then I realized one way doesn't work for everyone. And there's so much I can learn from doing things differently for every athlete. And that's worked really well for me, because it's taking each athlete into account and giving them what they need to truly, become the best athlete they can be.
Yeah. And you get better at learning personalities and strengths of each athlete to identify what they need throughout their year. And I love you touched on Rini and Mirinda Carfrae, who I mentioned in the introduction, 3-time world champion, plus a bunch of silvers and a bronze at World Championship. One of the greatest, athletes we've seen. And what we love, and both Mirinda Carfrae and her husband, Timothy O'Donnell, very, very good friends of ours as well. And we used to laugh that often throughout the year, myself, Laura, and Timothy O'Donnell would have wins. We'd get a couple of wins, whether it be 70.3, Olympic distance, whatever. We were winning. And we'd be like, don't worry, Rini, you'll be okay. Don't worry, Rini. And then boom, she'd go win another world title at the end of the year. And it was like this constant, I know she's a racer, and she didn't like not winning early in, May, June, July, August. And she did some years win those times, but quite often, I remember several times, all of us having a barbecue and a drink or whatever and going, don't worry, Rini, you're not retired yet. Don't worry.
Oh
And then
my
she
God.
come out, boom, another world title. I'm like, oh God, enough feeling sorry for Rinny not winning early in the year. So she definitely, you mentioned her several times about that she wanted to go all in for Kona. And that's what she wanted. And that became very clear, and she's won a lot of 70.3, a lot of other races, but it really, that event in Kona, I think she's had, is it 7 or 8 podiums now, with 3 wins. Just unbelievable resume. What I also like about your coaching is one thing to point out, Rennie and Susan Williams, who we kind of brushed over a little bit with her bronze medal at the Olympic Games, but you then picked up Leanda Cave, and boom, within a year of working with her, Leanda goes off to win Kona and a 70.3 world title in the same year. Just my point in bringing that up is you can't be just pointing out going, well, Rennie was really talented. You've gone and grabbed Leanda, who is an incredible athlete in her own right, but there was a pretty big gap between her world titles. And then winning those world titles, I think she won in 2012, back to back. So what I love about your resume as a coach is that you've been able to show that I can work with various athletes, and many athletes can be on the podium and world championship wins. So just incredible to you. How many do you have in your squad right now?
Right now I have 8 at this time. It was, when I got sick, I lost a couple, and, of course for me, I'm like, oh, they don't believe I'm going to live and I'm going to show them, but of course that wasn't it. They just really wanted to make sure that they had a squad to train with. And obviously no one really has a squad right now to train with due to COVID and everything. But so I've got a small squad because I'm doing, a lot of other things as well, but my coaching matters to me, more than ever. And it's kind of nice to have a smaller squad. I would like, Greg, if I can, to just honor Leanda Cave, since you brought that up.
Please do. Yes.
If it's okay to share, Rinny came in second in 2009. In 2010, she came back and won Hawaii. And 2011, she came in second. And she was really disappointed that she couldn't win it again. And she decided to change coaches. And as any coach, you're hurt. You feel like, my God, they don't appreciate, how far we've come together. They don't realize, my part in her success. And that was an incredible motivator for me. And then Leanda Cave showed up and she said, I want to win Hawaii. And, nobody believes I can. And I really want this more than anything in the world. And I'm like, hey, let's do this. Because for me, there was this part of me that was like, I'm going to prove that, I played a big role in this because I'm going to take this athlete and we're going to win a world championship. And that's going to prove that, that my part in this mattered, which we can all understand that. Let's be real. We can all understand that desire. And when Leanda came, she was such an amazing athlete. And I remember talking to, actually, I won't bring up that story, but a lot of people were like, oh, she's done her thing. Like she's not going to be able to win a world championship. So they were doubting her. I felt like I had been doubted. And we changed a lot of things for her. She's an incredible swimmer, but I had her change her swim stroke and develop a higher cadence. And we were doing a lot of, fast, short speed work, which she'd never done before. And we kind of worked on her run form. And just like I was talking about earlier, choosing races and saying, hey, let's just use this race to, work on your run. Let's go for a great 21K in this race. And the rest of the race just kind of cruise. And we went to 70.3 World Championships and she won. And it was like, oh my God, Leanda Cave just became a 70.3 World Champion. This is incredible. And that kind of got us even more excited about Kona, which was about 5 weeks later. And when we were there, honest to God, I'm on the side of the course out at like mile 13. And right when Leanda was about to get to me, Rinny had just caught her on the run. I'm like, great, I have to deal with this right now, the two of them together. And it was at that point, Rinny caught her and they ended up running into the energy lab.
What did you say? Hang on, what did you say when they both went past you? That's great.
I looked in Leanda's eyes. I looked in her eyes. She looked in mine and I said, you know what to do. And she gave me this look like, yeah, I do. And I waited and I waited. They're in the energy lab and I've got goosebumps everywhere. And I'm listening in my headphones to the race. And they're like, oh, there's no hope for Leanda. You know, nobody runs away from Rinny. And I'm watching and there's a fog coming up from the energy lab. And I see this tall, lean body. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Superbird. It's Leanda. And she had run away from Rinny. And Leanda ended up winning that race. And it was probably one of the greatest moments of my life because, you know, no one believed she could do it. And she did. And now she's, you know, she won a world championship at every distance. Like, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, she's one of the most remarkable, almost like, I feel at times we forget to mention her in one of the all-time greatest 5 or 6 women of all time because she's won at all distances, ITU World Championships, ITU Long Course, Ironman, 70.3. She's won them all. Unbelievable.
Yeah, she's incredible. And so I wanted to honor her because she is so incredible. And that was incredible. And again, it's an example of life happening for you, not to you. Rinny left, and that allowed me to take my coaching to a whole new level. She ended up coming back. We ended up winning the Ironman World Championship 2013 and 2014. And it was just an amazing, happy story. But sometimes like these things that are like these bombs that drop on you are happening to take you to a whole new level. And we need to appreciate that.
I love, Siri, this has just been absolutely fantastic. There's so many other things I want to chat to you about, but I recognize the time. I recognize that, you know, you've got a lot on your plate and you've taken all this time out for me just to chat. And, you know, we do miss you guys not being up in Boulder at the moment, but we will get back up there hopefully soon. Now, is there anything else you want to talk about? I know you guys have a foundation or 2 foundations. You want to quickly tell us about that?
Oh, I would love, thank you, Greg. Thank you for asking. My incredible wife, Rebecca Keat, and I rescued a horse a few years ago, and this horse like literally changed my life. I mean, self-discovery times a million, and really helped take my coaching to a whole new level as well. So I was so grateful. And one day I'm like, what am I saving her from? And I Googled online, you know, why am I rescuing a horse? And this video, which I can't find to this day, came up, and it was showing the brutal slaughter of horses. It was just awful, like these beautiful animals being pulled up on a pulley and shot in the head, and it takes them 6 minutes to die, and they're being dismembered alive. Awful. I fell to the ground. I was like crying out. My wife came running up the stairs. I pointed at the screen, and we knew our lives were never going to be the same because these beautiful animals, like, they're healers, they're teachers, they're incredible. They're just these beautiful, beautiful animals. And we decided that we were going to devote our lives to saving these horses from slaughter. And we're in the process of actually banning horse slaughter altogether. And we're coming very close, which is a miracle. But our rescue is called Believe Ranch and Rescue.
Mm-hmm. I'll put that in the show notes for people listening. You could find it there. Yeah.
Amazing. And we're not just saving horses. Like, we save these horses, and these horses end up going to equine therapy ranches where they are helping people recover from PTSD, addiction, anxiety, fear. They're teaching leadership skills. So they're really, you know, saving humans as well. Mm. And In Our Hands actually Horses in Our Hands is our other nonprofit. They're both nonprofits. And we're going to end the slaughter of horses, which is amazing. But if anyone out there is a horse lover or is inspired by helping humans heal from things that hold us back in life, please support us. We're doing some amazing things here at Believe Ranch and Rescue. And Greg, I just want to honor you. You are just one of the greatest athletes the sport has ever seen, but also one of the most incredible humans. And your wife, Laura, same thing, one of the greatest athletes we've ever seen, but also one of the best human beings. And I'm so grateful to call you a friend and to be inspired by you and to have shared this time with you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. It means the world to me. And please give big hugs to Bex, one of the greatest women I know on this planet as well. So it's just been absolutely fantastic. Now, if people want to follow you, I'll put it in the show notes, your journey, the squad's journey. I know you have an amazing club I believe you guys have a club. You also have different podcasts and different shows. Tell me just a quick rundown of what those are, and I'll make sure those are in the show notes as well.
Great. Yeah, we have Team Sirius Tri Club. It's an amazing tribe of athletes of all different abilities. We do live chats every week and offer incredible value every week, just, tips on training, racing, nutrition, everything. And we'd love to have you be a part of our family. So you can find us on teamserioustriclub.com, which is our website. You can follow me, Siri Lindley, on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. But Team Sirius Tri Club, we'd love to get you on board. It's an amazing family we have.
Yeah, I've heard fantastic things about the club, and it's really affordable. It's one of those things I heard that's like, quite often people go, oh my God, how much am I forking out? But I think you guys have just done such a good job of this club and building up the numbers. And I think at one point you were one of the biggest clubs in the world, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what I've heard.
So we're very proud. We've got an amazing club. It's like $37 a month. We're offering a free month right now. So a perfect time to check it out and see what we're all about.
Perfect. Well, Siri, this has absolutely been fantastic. Thank you everybody for listening. If you're not inspired and feeling empowered after this conversation, I don't know what I can do to help you, because that was absolutely fantastic, Siri. So please stay on the line, and just absolutely wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Greg. You're amazing.
Thanks a lot for listening to Be With Champions. If you've enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Be With Champions Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.